like the people that are on the bottom, I was thinking like when people flush the toilets, like
the waste,
the
it
waste,
drops down
I
there.
was thinking,
Maybe they eat it. All right, so in our previous video, we started going over hive cities and the lifestyle of people living within the grimdark. I know this is a topic or a subject that you have wondered the whole entire time we've been doing these reactions. You were like, what do people eat? How do they live their lives? Is everyone happy? What do the women do? And so in the video we were watching, we learned a little bit about the Warhammer world and communities, including what the women do. And judging from the comments, we're coming to find out that, yeah, they produce babies the old-fashioned way. They don't knock them out or anything. They just have them lined up in brood factories, and they're just pumping out babies. And you know what? They said that the women are happy to do it because they're in service of the emperor.
they probably get $5,000.
I don't think they're getting they don't get shit. We learned about the currency too. The people don't get paid anything. If anything, they might get credit. They might get credits.
Okay.
So
5,000 credits.
Yeah,
There you go.
you don't even get that. All right. But we're gonna go ahead and
to the emperor.
Exactly. We're gonna go ahead and continue our video with Hive Cities by Luetin09's. So y'all can leave your thoughts in the comment section. Anything you gotta say before we jump in?
Yes, it's a lot to take in.
Oh. All right, y'all. Let's go.
Cut your hand or even your face off.
So it's Hive City anatomy.
So now we get into the real meat of it, the structure of a hive city. Now by the period of the 41st millennium, this is not something that could be considered a standard template, but generally they do follow some common structural relations with one another. This is of course though only a rough generalization, and the condition, the environmental factors and historical events of each individual hive will have played a part in determining its long-term structural layout and state. Many areas will have been repurposed over time or had structures added to them. At the base ground level of a hive though, some have been noted as being as small as 50 miles in diameter, whereas others will stretch for many hundreds, if not even thousands of miles in diameter.
Oh my goodness.
This will generally reduce to about half by the time a hive spire has begun to taper into its core and mid levels, and then reduce steadily the higher up the spire you climb. The lower middle third will be the most densely populated and busy part of a hive, with all of its heavy industry, while administrative sections and light manufacturing run from the ground levels up to the lower tiers.
So the hive, because it just took me a minute to get it. It's kind of like a beehive.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking maybe it's like a city and everyone's spread out. But no, it's like an actual hive.
They're built on top of each other.
That's insane.
They probably put the lowest level peasant people on the bottom.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is kind of sick.
Yeah. It's a preview of the future.
Within the upper hive. The wealthiest and those with hereditary ties live in what is known as the spire or the spires. These are the highest sections of a hive city and are physically separated from the lower levels by usually a heavy physical barrier. And there is not necessarily one singular spire section, there may in fact be several, and these will often have specific local titles and names. Of course, there are guarded transport systems to enable movement between the lower and the upper levels and throughout the hive city. Lastly, you have the subsurface areas, and these are usually referred to collectively as the underhive. This is where the criminals, the exiled, the disgraced and heretical individuals will generally occupy. But these are not just a few ramshackle below ground dwellings. The underhive is usually nearly as wide as the hive at its base level. From there it will then continue downward into abandoned or sometimes active mining operations or manufacturing. The underhive of most hive cities is very much a city in and of itself and has developed a complex subculture of gangs, guilds and merchants all of its own, albeit far more lawless and prone to solving disputes with casual.
It's like in Arcane when they had the underworld.
Oh yeah, but this is so much worse.
Yeah.
This seems very grim.
It's like they got 2 levels under the underhive.
And just the way that it looks, I forgot the type of architecture this is called, because in Europe, like the Catholic churches.
Oh, they had the catacombs.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they would dump all the dead babies and
at
shit.
the bottom, but at the top, I'm saying the type of architecture it is. Is it Gothic? Architecture.
Yeah.
And it just seems very grim. It's compacted and it's tall and it's on top of one another. And it just makes me feel, I feel weighed down. You know, just from looking at it, there's no space. There's no grass.
I think maybe that was the design of just how they wanted the people to feel. Very oppressive.
Yes.
That's what it feels.
Yes.
Let's go back a little bit. The dump. Jesus.
Active mining operations or manufacturing. The underhive of most hive cities is very much a city in and of itself and has developed a complex subculture of gangs, guilds and merchants all of its own, albeit far more lawless and prone to solving disputes with casual violence. Throughout the hive, there will be large areas, perhaps even sectors, that are locked down and declared off limits. This may be because they have become excessively contaminated from the centuries of manufacturing they have been used for. However, these dark and empty sectors of a hive can be very useful for those who wish to not be seen or be monitored. Hubs and factorums are rarely abandoned without good cause, but some areas will eventually reach a point where they are just too difficult to maintain. Either structurally they're dangerous, or for the fairly non-existent concept of worker safety. The area has maybe just become too saturated with pollution to allow most hive cities workers to operate there. In terms of hive construction and location, there are most certainly hive oddities where they have been built around a strange power source that is almost seen as a strange magic now to its citizenry or engineers and even the mechanicus. Others may exist even underwater, having been long ago drowned by some extraordinary planetary event millennia ago, but were adapted so as to be able to continue functioning in some capacity. Others have been constructed from materials even unknown to the mechanicus, which points us to something else that I'll come to shortly. Some may be entirely dedicated to one sole purpose, like the worship of the emperor, essentially becoming one behemoth shrine cathedral. Some hives are even vast penal colonies with its workers engaged in extremely dangerous manufacturing or mining processes. Others have become vast necropolis hives, having suffered from some apocalyptic battle long ago, and are now dedicated to honouring the dead and shrine to the emperor. And of course, many hives can be a strange mixture or any number of factors all blended together. And this is especially true in this later time where, for example, the ecclesiarchy, the mechanicus, the sororitas, the inquisition and so on, basically the administrative and militant structure of the Imperium may at any time deem it necessary to requisition a part of a hive city for its own operations. And it would be fairly unusual for such a request to not be granted by a hive city's ruling nobility or by a planetary governor. But of course, this would always be determined on a situational basis. All hive cities are deemed to be of significant importance to the Imperium, and as such the military forces ready to defend them will generally be significant. The Imperium employs an approach to defending hive cities that could be characterized as suicidal to the point of madness. They see hive cities as being the definitive mark of mankind upon a world, and as such they will deploy any force necessary to defend them against their enemy. This is likely why, although inquisitors, as we have learned, may employ exterminatus upon a world, this is hardly something that passes easily, and any destruction of a hive city is a devastating black mark upon imperial records. There are of course some circumstances where this last man standing approach does not occur, because insane or cowardly hive nobles or planetary governors may always put their own interests above the Imperium, as sad as that is to believe, or they may just be taking a more inquisitorial, big picture approach and consider that the destruction of one hive may be necessary to save the others on a world. This, though, is far from the preferred option, which is generally to saturate any hive engaged with Xenos with human fighters, even if they're left fighting over nothing but rubble. In fact, on some hive planets where Xenos have destroyed hive cities, patrols will still investigate and walk those ruins every day to purge any remnant of the enemy for many hundreds of years, primarily of course to be sure that there is no chance given for any resurgence, especially in the case of the orc and the tyrannid species, who are very pervasive and can leave their biological seed behind for decades, if not generations, suddenly to then reappear again and ravage a world without warning. Each imperial citadel is a grand symbol of the achievements and power of humanity, but in the 41st millennium they also signify the reach and divinity of the emperor's rule over mankind in the Imperium. To allow a hive city to fall without expending significant resources would be a disgrace to the glory of the emperor and the Imperium, and if that means expending many billions of human soldiers to save even the tattered remnants of a hive city, then so be it. The surroundings of many hives are devoid of any natural life whatsoever, and this is because they have suffered from millennia of pollution and exploitation of resources, and this leaves them as little more than wastelands of polluted or sometimes irradiated ash, referred to often as, unsurprisingly, the ashen wastes. Now, some human characters will still exist here though, either in micro settlements or in and around the base external areas of the hive itself, perhaps to salvage scrap metal or materials or making repairs to pipelines and transport tubes. Many worlds can contain hidden rewards in the form of available scrap or even lost technology. Those who do scout the wasteland may even be lucky enough to venture upon, say, a rich oxide vein or accumulation of valuable chemicals that have leached from the bedrock below. These pockets will be mined or collected for return and processing within the hive city. The aforementioned transport tubes are an ancient tech not seen on all hive worlds, but on those where they are present, they usually exist in connecting hive clusters together, and that is multiple hive cities in relative close proximity. These tubes are usually suspended from cables above the wastes, although sometimes they could also be buried below ground. These can be few or many, and one good example is the hive city of Necromunda, where it's often described how these resemble something like a spider's web.
Oh, wow.
Now, the outer surface of a hive city can sometimes appear to be solid, but it is in fact pierced with various shafts and tunnels. These shafts are small compared to the bulk of the spire in general, but this is where the low amounts of light will enter the hive city, and these tubes and shafts also connect to the air processors that we'll discuss momentarily. The shell is where the majority of the inter-spire travel tunnels and tubes will also begin and end, and tunnel stations and gateway fortresses, compounds and garrison blocks are all located at the shell, so they're best able to contribute towards the regulation and defense of the city, as well as traffic between and within the hives. The shell is also the first line in a hive city's active defenses against planetary invasion. They will often have giant defense lasers that are capable of striking orbital targets and are mounted at many points across a hive city, and these will be used to defend against either human or Xenos spacecraft. The shell is also critical in protecting the hive city from various environmental conditions, be that glass ash thrown at the hive during a storm, solar radiation, blizzards, and all manner of other extreme conditions throughout the galaxy. But I am sure that some of you are now pondering a burning question, which is, how is it that if a planet's entire ecological system has collapsed because of hive cities, how there may be any oxygen for these huge populations? And this is indeed a tricky and fair question.
See, and that was something that I was wondering, because it looks like the whole planet is very desolate, or they're wastelands because of the, I guess, harvesting of resources. So it's like, how are they getting clean air? How are these people surviving?
That's what I was thinking.
Because I don't, throughout these videos that we watch, you rarely see vegetation or greenery on any of these planets. Yeah, no trees, no nothing. It looks like everything just looks war-torn and ravaged.
Yeah. And I was, one of the questions that I had was, what's the lifespan of these people?
Oh, yeah. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Because, back in the day in like the Middle Ages and stuff, lifespan
like
was
30,
30.
35.
Yeah, you were lucky to make it to 35. Yeah. So it's like by the time you were 13 or 14, that was like adulthood. It might be the same, because then the people are conscripted into the military and you go into your separate branches, and they already said that once somebody joins the military, they're not expected to be seen again in their communities. So yeah,
I remember that.
Right, yeah. If they don't cover it in the video, maybe one of y'all can help us out in the comment section. Let us know what's the average lifespan of a soldier, or even, well, I guess not
even a soldier,
with just a regular person. Yeah.
And then like the people that are on the bottom, I was thinking, like when people like flush the toilets. Like,
the waste, it drops down
I
there.
was thinking
it's probably just like that. It just goes down there. Yeah, maybe they eat it.
The short answer is that for many hives, similar to as was seen on Mars during its descent into anarchy, there will be a small assignment of mechanicus within most hive cities who will tend to the more complex systems required to perhaps not fully but mostly support a hive city's population. But remembering that the majority of hive worlds will rely on supply from agri-worlds and so on, who will farm essential raw resources for human life by utilising the entirety of these planets as gigantic biofarms, moisture farms and so on. Within the hive itself though, it will still do what it can to minimise how much reliance is placed on these imported resources from the wider Imperium. So in terms of breathable air, this will be variable depending on the hive and its planet. Some hive worlds may still have a very simple ecology, and this can be enough to sustain a very basic level of breathable atmosphere. Others, like on Necromunda, whilst its surface is devastated and a wasteland of pollution, it is believed that within the ashen waste surrounding it that covers also the entire planet's surface, there still exists some low levels of life, like a bacteria and algae, and it is speculated that these are able to produce very extremely minimal levels of oxygen, but enough to provide something for the hive cities.
Wow.
Many hive citizens will of course have simply become adapted to the conditions on their world over many generations, and so have adapted physically to lower levels of breathable air, especially considering how they work already within polluted conditions inside hive manufactorums, where respirators are often mandatory, if they're available at all, that is. Overall though, the Mechanicus will have infrastructure fitting the broad description of purification processes to help in the delivery of breathable air for a population. But this will often be coordinated as well with guilds within the hive city in terms of distribution. The external air is sucked in via the vent ports on the hive shell and then passed through a complex system of purification filters to extract contaminants that are pumped back out into the atmosphere or sometimes may be utilised in processes. These Mechanicus teams are present in, as I said, most hive cities, and they also maintain the more complex core energy systems where it's necessary, water processing facilities and so on. But as I also said, this may be done in collaboration with various guilds of humans that are committed to singular areas of a city, much like large feudal towns may have done in their ancient history of mankind, where cities could be divided into sectors with a specific guild of a city committing to the upkeep of their own district. Because you see, within a hive city the idea of a centralized control was mostly abandoned long ago, and now what's formed within most hives is something like a decentralized form of feudal governance, with the hive's noble rulers able to overrule generally where necessary, but also not really needing to get involved in the day-to-day affairs of hive sectors. Planetary governors meanwhile overviewing things for the wider bureaucracy of the Imperium, only stepping in or making demands where necessary, and of course you're going to have various institutions and representatives that are just dotted around a hive, keeping an eye on what's going on generally. Next we come to the central heart of all hive cities, where you'll find what are referred to as heat sinks. Now these are basically vertical shafts that run down from the uppermost levels of a hive in the spire all the way down through the hab levels, the underhive, through to the geology of the planet itself. And these heat sinks can be miles across in parts, usually constructed from dense layers of plasteel. It will have built into it various service access points, chambers and so on to allow inspection and maintenance. Access to the heat sink, because of its importance, usually becomes less the lower down you go, and if access points do exist, those are going to be heavily sealed behind vast doors of adamantium, likely under permanent guard. You can never be sure who might find a lost or compromised access point, and the potential for this, once discovered, to be exploited or to cause disruption for those who seek such disorder becomes very dangerous indeed. But what is a heat sink? Well, the idea is fairly as it sounds. It's to take geothermal heat from the planet and turn this into power for the city and the spire. So dotted throughout the spire will be generator stations used to convert this heat into usable energy, and this power is then conveyed to the factories, hab levels and so on. These heatsink generators are usually going to be controlled by guilds or clans at their various levels of habitation, and the maintenance of them is a very important role. However, it also means that they're able to use this as a power chip and gives them a powerful level of control over the localized population in their area. Because if you want power, you need to ensure that the guild or clan controlling that generator is going to allow it. Other groups may control power junction points and demand something more like a toll to ensure smooth transmission of power to a sector. Within some hive cities this provides something on a small scale economy, but in other hives this devolved system of power over sectors will not at all be tolerated, where they lean toward a more controlled centralized system of governance, which is probably more in line with how the Imperium operates overall. But as I say, it's very different and dispersed depending on which hive you're at. Some hive cities, though, are run by those who have very little interest in the lower goings-on, providing things just remain relatively stable and that they are able to maintain their quotas of resources to the Imperium. And so the mid and lower levels of a hive are basically left to just get on with things however they please, and this can be beneficial or problematic for obvious reasons. In the upper spire, this kind of control over power systems is far less likely to occur. Here the ruling noble family will maintain control and armed troops will guard any generator stations. It will be highly regulated and part of the more structured nature of the upper hive spires. But it's worth noting that whilst most all hives will utilize a heat sink for temperature regulation as well as power, additional power sources often will exist within the manufacturing areas or even the habitation sections of a city. Some of these power sources can be actually pretty strange and unknown even, and continue to operate within the Mechanicus, not wanting to really tinker around too much given the chance that something could just go horribly wrong and destroy the entire city. Some will also rely on nuclear power to run areas of a city, or power manufactorums again that have been constructed during the age of the Imperium or when the Mechanicum was still establishing forge worlds across the galaxy. The majority of the lower levels of the hive will be dedicated to industrial processes. Although various more specialized facilities may exist throughout the city and up into the spire, obviously if these exist within the upper spire, they're going to likely be more advanced processes and may involve levels of things like DNA augmentation, bioengineering facilities that are designed even to extend life for those in those senior positions or the nobility. Down at the factory levels, things are very different. The scale of the manufacturing...
I kind of assume the people higher up live longer.
Right, yeah. They have a better quality of life.
Yeah, but
that's what it looks like.
Below,
right.
I'm not
They're getting
sure
the worst of the worst.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not lasting that long.
Because I think something that I have to kind of constantly remind myself is that although a lot of stuff looks old, they have this Gothic architecture, and a lot of the way they do things is very old. They're still a very advanced and high-tech society. Yes. So when they're doing like gene splicing and editing and stuff like that to preserve their lives, that's really crazy.
Yeah, but it feels dystopian.
Yeah.
You know, so the mix of the high-tech and futurism with the old architecture and the way they I guess build things and do things, is like this contrast.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And it's still kind of hard to believe that although there's so much going on, there's still a certain level of organization and that things still work. Because typically, I would think in a society like this, people would be constantly fighting. And there would be shifts in power all the time within noble houses or even lower level individuals trying to rise above their ranks and stuff.
I was thinking about that too.
Yeah. Because, I mean, who wouldn't want to escape the dump or the underworld to live the good life? Yeah. You know, that's a story that we always hear about.
Yeah.
And most hives is required, along with the production of citizens, to deliver products to the wider Imperium in exchange for food and other materials that are needed to sustain these vast populations. Many factories that exist on the lower periphery of the hive city and ground level will be continually pumping out pollutants, and if the city is not constrained by an exterior city wall, or even if it were for that matter, eventually these pollutants will build up and solidify, enabling the ashen material outside, or whatever situation the world is in, to just grow ever higher. It could be a dense jungle, it could be ice, you know, whatever. Over the centuries, this can create a problem where the lower factories become gradually submerged by the outside material, and once they're unable to pump out their pollutants, they then will become essentially inviable for production. So similarly to the power generation, manufacturing will also be controlled in part by guilds or clans, and although dependent on how a hive city is organized and governed, we can already note that this varies significantly between planets. Now this seems actually a good place for me to make a small side note, I say small, We're talking about planetary organization related to Hive Cities. Now, many may mistakenly assume that how we see the wider Imperium run at its highest levels is then filtered down and replicated throughout all of its galactic sectors, its systems and its worlds. Now, in one sense, this is not completely inaccurate to say, because we know the Imperium has no real concerns about deploying its ultimate authority as and where it deems necessary by the hands of the Inquisitor or any of its high-level representatives. However, it is worth noting that the majority of worlds, for the most part, are, as I said, left to their own devices, and this means that there is not what we might consider to be a standardized or enforced system of governance within the Imperium making decisions for systems and worlds. There is, of course, the Administratum that will keep track of what's happening and who needs what where, what's coming and going, but so long as the planet is delivering its tithes and materials to the wider Imperium and not encountering any major problems with Xenos or within their population, then they're more or less left to their own devices, because what does the Imperium care? Also, most planets will have within their hive some imperial representation, as I said before, the ecclesiarchy and so on. So it's not as if many hive cities and their planets can really get up to anything without it being noted soon enough. It should though of course be remembered that because of the very nature of the Imperium and its other factions, departments and organisations, that there are some established restrictions that will influence any decisions made. This means that most worlds do lean toward a more top-down power structure of a singular leader for a planet, and as I've noted before, something like a governor, an imperial representative, a high-ranking noble will fill this role. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility though for a hive city or even a planetary system to be run by something more like a council of representatives, or even something like a parliament. There is some precedent for that within the Imperium, and the Mechanicum had this basically back in the time before the heresy. Now, it just would be unlikely though that those members would be chosen by citizens, because that is not how the Imperium generally operates. It would take time and resources to educate the citizenry, and these are all things which are not considered worthwhile use of time or resources. Also, the entire concept of something like a council means that by its nature there should be a sense that said council could make decisions about what should or could or couldn't happen. Now, in a wider sense, this again really kind of goes against the way in which the Imperium operates, because usually they tell you what's going to happen and then you better do it or you're going to be replaced or worse. The point of all this is coming back to what I was originally saying about different planets and hive cities being governed. You might be able to have something like a council of representatives who just represent different sectors within a hive city, but more so as to facilitate a coordinated understanding of the production, to report in on dangerous problems, slacking workers, or rumours of discontent and so on that need to be cracked down on. Then that council could be overseen by a higher level representative who would almost certainly be one person in a position of authority, if not placed there by the Imperium, then certainly on the understanding that whatever their decisions are, they should be within the best interests for the Imperium first and all other considerations second. I would liken any council structure within a hive city to be very similar to the concept of the Inquisition's imperial representative. So a hive council member would probably be chosen within, say, already senior members of a clan or a guild, and they act more like a mouthpiece to facilitate the smooth running of hive activities and the preservation of their own group, more than espousing sort of personal opinions. But overall, they have no special level of power beyond that, and they're more like a token gesture of cooperation than anything else. So now returning to manufacturing within a hive.
Alright, so we're gonna wrap right there, but yeah, no democracy, and they're not educating the population.
Now, why would they?
Yeah,
because
they don't want people thinking.
Once you educate people, it's like you said, they start thinking and thinking about opportunities, or maybe things should be done this way. This is not right. It opens up your mind towards freedoms and possibilities and hope.
Ooh, yeah. Hope.
And so if you don't know life in any other way, then it's easier to control you. It's easier to keep your life the same. You don't think of what if or any other possibilities or rising above your situation.
Right. So now it makes me think that maybe some people that are born into the underworld or the undercities, they probably never leave.
Oh, they definitely don't.
They probably don't even know that there's a city above it.
I'm sure they know, but it's
I can
this
see.
Is my life.
I can see with the world of Warhammer, there's probably such an iron grip of control over the people that it wouldn't be too far-fetched to believe that they wouldn't know that there's like a better life or something else out there, you know. And now that we're coming to find that the Imperium, the major Imperium, they don't care what people do on these planets or these hive cities, as long as you're paying your tithes or your taxes and you're contributing whatever you have to the major Imperium. They don't care what they do on these planets. You know, this is like very fascinating.
Well, I think the people know that there's levels above them, but their mind is kind of put under control. It reminds me of the church. When you are just a good little Christian, you don't ask any questions, you get praised for it. When you are questions. Like me, you get ostracized and get told you're going to hell. And I just found out that that's abuse.
Well, you know what? Back in the day, that's what they would do, and they would call them heretics.
Oh,
yeah. And
so see, heresy. So that's this.
Right, exactly.
And so you want to be a good
worshiper
of the emperor. Right. You don't want to be a heretic. You don't want to be like me. Right. You don't want to question things. You don't want to have logic. Right. You know what I mean? And
yikes.
So this is why it's so interesting to me, because I love having these conversations, because you can't really have conversations like this amongst family, even friends. Definitely not at work. Right. So I rarely have these conversations.
But to see it done on an extreme level, like Warhammer,
it's so interesting. Yeah,
it's so interesting, and it's incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it does let you know that left to its own devices, what lengths would mankind go to?
Right. And I think a lot of these people are in a psychosis. You have to be to just willingly kind of give up your life or not question things or not want better for yourself and just say for the good of the emperor. You have to be in some kind of mental state or psychosis to just go along with this.
Well, there you have it, guys. We're going to continue things with our video on hive worlds. We're also going to kick things off with our specialty videos where we're focusing on some of the legions specifically. So y'all can leave your thoughts and your comments down below in the comment section, and we'll see y'all in our next video. Peace. All right, so I have another cinematic video for you, in which I love these cinematics because they give us a little bit more insight on the world of 40K Warhammer and what it looks like, how people fight, or what is actually going on in the world there. I mean, we already know it's chaos and it's war all the time, but just watching these kind of puts you there in the front seat. So let's go ahead and jump into it. This is the trailer for Dawn of War.
We have fought the enemies of humanity across 1,000 worlds.
What did it say?
It says Blood Ravens. Okay,
across 1,000 worlds. No respite, no remorse, no mercy. We are the wrath of the Emperor, his angels of death. But the Imperium lies broken, its armies scattered and reeling. Our foes rise to drag us down, and the galaxy has been torn asunder.
It's a Necron.
In the world of Kronos, we make our stand. We are the Blood Ravens. There is no victory to claim here. Only vengeance to enact. Whilst even one of us lives, we fight. For only in death does duty end.
Only in death does duty end?
Sometimes not even in death.
Ooh. Oh yeah, because you're going to the warp.
Yeah. Oh man. Now this is my style of game because I like RTSs, I like the top-down games, and I know you hate this. You hate because you feel like you gotta be there.
Yeah, I need to look at my opponent head on, not from the top.
But it looks cool because I play games like League of Legends and Warcraft and stuff like that. And so I could probably jump in this game.
Yeah, this was definitely cool. I was just thinking, I bet if they have funeral directors, they make a killing. Like all the funerals they have in one day.
I don't think they have funeral directors. I think they
I'm just saying, but I mean,
or something like
cool
it.
If they did, you
no,
know?
It wouldn't. There's so much death that happens. They probably just have to collect the bodies and throw them in a pit and just burn them.
He covered them with the flag.
Yeah,
so that's like what is it? You call it a ritual?
Yeah, but the guy they covered with the flag, he looked like he was like a space marine commander or something like that. He was somebody who was very important. Okay. But I can imagine with as much death and destruction that they have, there's got to be dead bodies everywhere.
Yeah, and that's why you need
you need to throw them in a pit and get rid of them before he spreads diseases.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Then you got something else to fight. You got orcs, you got necrons, you got xeno bugs, and now you have bacteria and viruses.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
That's something they don't talk about
diseases.
Diseases, because I can imagine like them people probably be getting sick.
Oh,
you know, you call him Papa Nurgle. Anyway, guys, leave your thoughts down below in the comments. Oh yeah, go ahead.
So, is this your favorite one?
Like my favorite games?
No, not your favorite game. The Legion.
No, it was the Grey Knights. So the Blood Ravens are really cool, in which you haven't seen any videos on them, but when we do go into the specialized legions, we're probably going to do a video on the Grey Knights, and then you'll see how cool they are, because they're like Space Marine psychers. They go through like really, really tough training, and they're just really, really cool. I mean, all the Space Marines are cool, and you'll find which ones will be your favorite. But yeah, the Grey Knights, they're kick-ass.
Well, let us know if they're funeral directors and Warhammer. I know they making a killing, and then they could tithe more. You know?
No.
Yeah.
And then, if anything, instead of burning the bodies, they probably just haul them off to the factories to be turned into food.
Corpse starch.
Corpse starch, yeah.
But
yuck.
I forgot about corpse starch.
Yeah, exactly.
This is sick.
It is sick.